This is Tyler Prochazka, the features editor for Basic Income Earth Network's Basic Income News, and I'm joined today by Vincent Santiago, who is the director behind the upcoming documentary called The Mincome Experiment, which will talk about the research that has sort of been left behind in all these years and has recently been uncovered. So I'm really excited that Vincent is joining me today. So first, Vincent, can you explain what is the background of the documentary that you're doing?
Yes, the documentary about the Mincome experiment, which is the Manitoba's basic income experiment back in the 70s. And so the documentary deals, the team is focused mainly on the Mincome experiment, but also it talks about like the economic history to try to put a bigger context into it so people can appreciate it more.
And so can you give a little more background into what exactly is the Mincome experiment?
Yeah, the Mincome experiment is basic income experiment that was done in Manitoba back in the 70s. This was jointly done by the federal government under the Liberal government of that time and the NDP government at Manitoba. So this experiment went during the 70s, and there was some random sample site like Winnipeg, but the saturation site was in Dauphin, so the whole town was eligible to receive a basic income. And so the experiment runs its course, and the experiment itself was completed, but at the same time there was a change in government both at the Manitoba and at the federal level. So the experiment was never analyzed after that. And it was until recently when Dr. Forget tried to retrieve the records that they started analyzing the results, and also David Kalnitsky, doctoral for his doctoral dissertation, actually went into the records and started digitizing the records there.
So can you give us a little more insight into what some of the results Dr. Forget actually found in the Mincome experiment?
Yeah, Dr. Forget found that there was actually a reduction in the hospital visits, and there was a reduction in the cases of mental problems, and there was no big reductions in people who works, and the only sector that was affected was like the mothers who gave birth and teenagers who stopped working to finish high school.
And at the time, my understanding was that a lot of people thought that these experiments in the 1970s were a failure because they found, the lowered work hours among mothers and high schoolers. How would you, if that same type of result is kind of talked about today, what do you think? How do you think the reaction would be different?
Like at that time, there was no maternity yet, and I think at this time the reaction might be. I think one of the lessons learned from the Mincome experiment was there's have to be more communications, because at that time it was set up as like the researchers or academics, and they're not too concerned about the public relation. So at this time, I guess with a bit of public relations and explaining it better, and I guess people will understand more. And there will always be concerns and misconceptions, and this is what the documentary hopes to get into, to try to change perceptions. And just looking at posts online, you can see people always have this sometimes a very strong opinion, thinking it's a socialism or whatever, communism. Yeah.
So, what inspired you to do this particular documentary? Why the Mincome experiment, and why now?
Yeah, I've said back in 2014, I think, when I first heard that Dr. Forge is looking for volunteers to help digitize the results from the Mincome experiment. Um, of course, she never pursued that because it was too much work for an individual, and to digitize it was too much. And so, but um, she used another, like she tried to collect the data, like the hospital visits and those, to correlate them and compare it with the control group. And she went about it that way. But and then David Kalnitsky uh, was doing his dissertation for the doctoral, for his doctoral degree, and he went actually, for Dr. Forge encouraged him to went through the records, and he did, and he's still doing more work on those records right now. And the thing that they liked about the saturation site is they can see the social interaction, social consequence, like if they see their friends going back to school, and it affects everyone else, and they can see that because the whole town has are eligible for basic income. And I got interested in that because I always thought there's got to be a better way. Like there, you see all the time, like the economic situation, inequality is increasing, and basic income. It's easy to dismiss and laugh at basic income, but the more you learn about it, the more you see uh, the benefit of basic income. And at the same time, just like the healthcare, when they first introduced healthcare in Canada, there was a lot of opposition, even from among the Canadian Medical Association. And there was a well-funded campaign against it, and misinformation or misconception. And so that's why I thought this documentary, I like to make this documentary to try to dispel all the misconceptions and false perception.
And what do you think the biggest misconception about the Mincome experiment is?
That people will stop working, and that the poor, and another big misconception is that the poor deserves to be poor because they chose to be poor, they chose to do drugs. That's a big part of, I think, the documentary that has to be explained, and try to relate the real life stories and compare it to how the current welfare is working. And because in reality, people think that income, or basic income in general, would make people stop working. But like Milton Friedman says, it would actually help encourage people to work, because the current welfare system is big disincentive to work. And like the economists I talked to and Dr. Milton Friedman both says the current welfare there's a effective tax of 100% if you started working, and basic income would remove that disincentive to work.
So, can you give us an idea of how the documentary will be set up? What will be the different components of the documentary that you're exploring?
Yes. So we'll touch on the history, because I think we need a bigger perspective if we're going to deal with why we need basic income. So I'll touch on the history to see how our economic transformation through the ages, and why is basic income a good fit for the next evolution. Yeah, to, I don't know if you call it post-industrial, some we call it new renaissance, and basic income is a great foundation to help us get through that. There will be a lot of changes. They call it fear of technological disruption, and basic income is a good fit for more than one thing. And I guess if you approach it from not just the current situation, but just looking at how our economic transformation went from industrial revolution, and to how the visionaries and philanthropists look at how our future is going to be and the problem that we have to deal with. And so we'll set it up to tell a story of our human history in a way, and then go into basic income history. Some people would say it goes back to ancient times, through like during the North American Basic Income Congress in Winnipeg last year. One elders from the Aboriginal community says basic income is something they had before, like the post-colonial era. That's how nobody's get left behind. Everybody looks after each other. That's what basic income is. And so we can go back to the ancient history and says how it was, and going back and how and then the history of basic income, and then the history of Mincome. I mean, the results of Mincome, how it was then, and how, and there's a continued results that's being dig up by Dr. Kalditsky now, and it's an ongoing study still, and he's still going through the records. And also Ontario is now doing the pilot program, and former Senator Hugh Segal is who interviewed is wrote up a paper of so he's a special advisor to the Ontario Basic Income pilot. So it will be laid out like that, and then go into the future of what the future is like, what the visionaries are saying the future is going to be like, and how like the problems and what it could be like if we did basic income.
So I understand that you're doing a crowdfunding campaign. Can you explain to the viewers why they should support your documentary?
Yes, yeah, I have all the interviews done, so I could easily put it on YouTube and be done with it. But I think to be effective, we need a lot of explainers so people can understand, because it's a complex topic. And from how are you going to pay for it, and you can do calculation, and people want to understand it. So the best way is to show it through a fun animation, and to demonstrate how you're going to pay for it, how it was before, and do it in a fun way. And I guess that would draw more audiences, and both people, skeptics and supporters. I mean, we don't want to just attract supporters who already support it, and we want to attract people who don't understand, well, even people who had never heard of it. And to go do a very effective documentary, we need a good animation, so that costs money. And so that's why we launched a crowdfunding campaign, and I think the goal is it's very low goal compared to relatively 100,000 normally spent by movie, but with good, like, using the money efficiently, we can do a good animation and everything else. So that's what the crowdfunding is for. So to make sure we can we have the funds to not hold back on doing a good animation and explainer and a good footage to go with the video. So with the documentary.
So in the course of doing the documentary and the background research, was there anything that you didn't know that surprised you?
I read a lot before then, so I didn't really get surprised much. Well, I guess there was some, like, in the Canadian side of things, and the conservative, when we introduced the NAFTA in Canada, there was a McDonald Commission report, and the McDonald Commission actually recommended, aside from getting into treaties to expand, like, the economy, is to have a basic income. I guess I forgot what they call it now, but the basic idea was to make sure, while we're pursuing a big economic expansion and flexibility, we want to preserve the social equality, and basic income is the way to do it. So that was a surprise. And the other thing was Brian Mulroney, who was the prime minister at that time, introduced basic income. Introduced NAFTA, signed NAFTA, and he didn't support sure if I haven't interviewed him, but there was a news article that says guaranteed income might be coming back, that Brian Mulroney is looking to it. So there was this news article that mentioned that. And also after that, there was we have Jiang Krashen, our prime minister, liberal prime minister, and there was also a chatter that he was looking to guaranteed income, but then after that 9/11 happened, so I guess there was a bit, and there was a big strong opposition from the conservative at that time about the guaranteed income. So yeah, so those are nice tidbit that I discovered while doing research for the basic income documentary.
And what are some of the past works that you've done? Have you worked on any past documentaries or research like this, and how does it compare to the Mincome documentary?
No, I didn't. I only did short film, so I haven't really done documentary, but I've been studying and taking courses. I didn't have film school training, but we have a good community at Winnipeg. Like we have Winnipeg Film Group, Video Pool, which were great in assisting new filmmakers, and that's why the film industry in Winnipeg is growing, and it's nice to be surrounded by creative people here from animation and all types of stuff.
And what got you into basic income in the first place? How were you introduced to the idea of just giving direct cash? Was it through the Mincome, or was it through another type of research?
Yeah, it was through Mincome basically, because at that time I'm not really a activist going out compared to other people, but I was always trying to to find solutions. And at that time I was like, oh, open government. Before, I didn't know it was already it was already a movement for open government at that time. But I said, this would be good, having everything open, data, and then that's on the government side of things. And then on the economic side, that was when I first heard Dr. Fortier was looking at the Mincome experiment. I didn't even know about the Mincome experiment. And after reading up on it, and then you keep discovering, and there are other. When I talked to Dr. Fortier, she mentioned there was other experiment in the U.S. So you start wondering and then learning more about basic income. And the more you learn about it, and the more you thought oh, this is like a perfect fit for a lot of things. And you find yourself, when people are talking about solving the child poverty and everything else, and you keep saying, oh, Mincome, oh, basic income, and yeah, so that's how I get into it and started learning more.
And how do you think that this documentary will affect the politics in Canada? I know that there's been a lot of movement on making pilot programs throughout a lot of different provinces. So I'm curious, what is your strategy? How do you think that the documentary will inform that discussion as these pilots move forward?
Yeah, I think it's very crucial because, I remember the Tears, Highway of Tears, or because there was a Aboriginal problem, problem of Aboriginal women being abducted, and so they wrote up, they made a documentary about the Highway of Tears, and then it was shown on the Senate, I believe, or House of Commons. And so in the same way, I think if we do a good documentary, it could be shown to the congressman, sorry, it's not congressman in Canada, it's the House of Commons, the MPs here, or the Senate, and this could help inform. Recently, someone brought up us, the liberal government, the federal government, because someone proposed this as a basic income during their convention, but it doesn't matter if they propose it in the convention if the party itself does not introduce it. But the Liberal government has shown some interest by saying, okay, let the province start and then we'll see. And they were supportive of Ontario's basic income pilot. But at the same time, we have the finance minister coming out again, thinking it's not a good idea So I think there's still a debate going on, and if we did a good job with the documentary, trying to dispel all the false notion, then we could get more support from more politicians, and this will be a good thing.
And so I just want to leave you on sort of a note. Let the viewers listening why you think documentaries in particular are important to spreading this message.
Yeah, because like if people like sometimes they read the article, but they could dismiss it right away. And documentary, like the successful documentary usually are entertaining. And I remember one documentary getting acclaim, and when the interviewer was asking and praising the director, not for about the subject topic, but they think it's a good documentary because of all the nice shots and the documentary. So if you get a good entertaining documentary and then people hear about it and they want to watch it, and then they find the topic interesting because they never heard of it, and then that could change their mind. So documentary have some of that people would otherwise not pay attention, but because it's entertainment, and then if they hear good reviews and they want to check it out, and that could help change their mind that they would otherwise not pay attention to.
All right, Vincent Santiago, this was a great conversation, and as you move along with the documentary process, I definitely want to keep in touch, and especially when it comes out, I'm really excited to see how it all comes together, because I don't know a lot about the Mincome experiment. So Vincent, the director behind the documentary, The Mincome Experiment, thanks a lot for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Tyler.